right. Well, welcome to, this is the 9th installment of the Adapt and Thrive series. And this series has been all about me talking to all these inspiring people in my life, some brand new, some I've known for a long time, just about what they've done to roll with the times of COVID, how they have adapted their work, their life, not just to get by, but to really thrive for themselves and to better serve their communities and people that they work with. So I am here today in the land of enchantment, Taos, New Mexico, and I've certainly been enchanted by all the golden trees and the mountains everywhere. It's just been so beautiful. But I'm here today with the powerful, luminous Beth Barbaglia, a breathwork teacher, a retreat leader, a personal coach, a graphic designer. You do a lot of things, Beth.
I do a lot of things.
And for the Akron community that's watching this, you'll remember Beth when she came through and we co-led a class back in August. So where I've been starting all these discussions is, not only with an explanation of your work and everything that you do and really care about, but specifically what that looked like before all the COVID madness hit. Okay. So, there you go.
All right, first question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you summed it up pretty good. I do a lot of things. My work, my healing work, mainly anymore, falls under the umbrella of Held in the Heart, which is my business, my online platform community, where I offer my personal coaching, spiritual life coaching, mentorship, and breathwork workshops, and the retreats, and all of that. In regard to where that was at before COVID and now, there's a lot about that actually didn't really change very much for me. I have been working remotely and traveling to teach for several years now, and in the last maybe year and a half, 2 years especially, had intentionally been starting to focus a lot on shifting things into more of an online community, online platform, for a multitude of reasons, largely because of the travel that I do and just wanting to have the freedom and just be able to reach more people from all over, just have more flexibility with my schedule. So I had already been in a place where I was moving a lot of my work less and less in the direction of being in person with people. Yeah. Still traveling to teach the workshops in person, but creating an online coaching program, that would be happening virtually via Zoom anyway. I was already doing my virtual groups via Zoom and one-on-one coaching that way. So in all honesty, there was a lot of, logistically how my work was moving was already in that realm of the online space, which
so
I know
got a head start.
Yeah, that was like a big impact for a lot of people was having to shift into that online space, and I was very grateful that was sort of already what I was doing. So it didn't really, shake the foundation of my daily schedule too much, or just the trajectory of what I was already doing with my work.
Can we pause there? And I want to
absolutely.
There's some folks who are familiar with the breathwork practice that you do and that you lead, and I certainly am. And but I think it's one of those things that there is a lot of mystery around.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm curious. What could you explain to everyone about it?
About what the practice is?
Yeah.
Or
any angle you want to go into, the significance to you or even how you got led down that path.
Sure. Wow. Yeah, it's a
That's a big question. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Well, and just when you say how you got led, I go back to when that moment. I think, where was I at that time in my life? It's just seems like lifetimes ago. And with what was happening in my life at the time that I did get led to it, I mean, it was very, excuse me, very, very divine, very serendipitous, all of those things. And it really was, I was very much led to it. I had never heard of breath work before. I didn't know what it was. I was barely practicing yoga at that time and was just in a space of a lot of transformation. Basically a whole breakdown of everything in my life was going on, and I was just in a really open, surrendered, very raw place of just kind of seeking anything. Really just like very simply, I was like, I just want to feel at peace, you know? And so I was just looking for things that were going to help me feel at peace, feel strong, just reconnect to myself. And I started practicing yoga at a very particular studio that I just felt a resonance with in Los Angeles, where I lived for many years, and where largely a lot of my healing journey took place. And that studio had breathwork classes, and I didn't know what it was, but I was just really in that curious space of I'm going to try everything, right? So I was going to the sound bath and the this and the that, and like everything that they offered.
Which is a beautiful space to be in.
It is.
And when that's part of the sweetness of being in pain, is
Absolutely.
that we're more ripped open to try things that we might normally not.
Yeah, when you're just surrendered like that, it is, even though it can feel really painful in a lot of ways, or again, like I just said, raw. There's tremendous beauty in it, because you're just, it's like walls are down, surrender. You're just like, you know, where else is there to go from here? But like, be curious about, you know, what I might be able to learn or discover in this process. And I knew intuitively at that time, like, something's happening to me. Like, I need to, like, you know, I'm growing. Like, it was very much a very real awakening that I was amidst at that time. And so,
tell us about your first breathwork experience. I feel like we're getting the origin story here of this work that, you know, you've impacted so many people's lives with, including mine in a very big way. And I'm curious about what your first experience with it was like.
I mean, I'll never forget it. I think probably a lot of people feel that way. Once they start breathwork, you never forget the first time. And again, like I said, I knew nothing about it. So I had no preconceived notion or any expectation. I just was very like, I'll see what this is. And it was equally, I would say, uncomfortable as much as it was, again, something intuitively, even while I was doing it, I just, like, I never stopped, because you do this active breathing pattern for quite some time. It's a long, many minutes that you're doing it, and I never stopped. So something in me, even though I was like physically feeling very uncomfortable, a lot of energy moves in this practice, which is, what you're looking to do is kind of dislodge and move a lot of stuck energy. But again, I didn't know any of that at that point. And so you can feel a lot of discomfort in the body, and it can feel even maybe a little scary. And I just stuck with it. And I just remember the teacher who was leading it just really was holding that space with a lot of love. And so I felt safe in that, and from that point forward, it really, again, was just a very intuitive, like, there's something here in this. I don't know what, I don't know why. I just feel like this is something I'm supposed to keep doing. And another teacher at that studio who was leading some breathwork classes there too, and this is many years ago. Breathwork in Los Angeles has become a lot more widespread now. It's widely available at many places, but this was many years ago when it kind of wasn't as commonplace as it seems to be anymore. And anyway, the studio where we were, there was another teacher there, and we had gotten to know each other a little well, and she said I would encourage you to check out the training, like the actual training to facilitate it was happening there. And she said, not so much for if you ever wanted to facilitate or not, but like just to do it for your own healing.
Learning.
And for your own healing, because you very much are put through the ringer of your own healing through that training.
Yes.
And
I want to pause you there for 1 second, though, because there's something you touched on that I think is extremely valuable. Like, because that when you were talking about how you felt in that first session. Like,
Right.
I was remembering when, like, one of the first, like, the first yoga class I took with my teacher, and I had, just gotten back from India, and my life was a mess. I was a mess. It was just mess, broken,
Yeah.
But it was that same feeling of, like, I don't know what's happening. I was following a curiosity because I just wanted some alleviation from what I was dealing with. And I was following curiosity, and yeah, there was a lot of it that was uncomfortable and, like, weird. But it was that feeling of, like, this is going to take me somewhere.
Right.
And that's not an easy thing to feel. But, I think when we can have the courage to follow that, it's like that's where to go.
Yeah. And that's actually, like, it.
Yeah.
Anymore. Like, I always share this with people, clients and students, that because there's a lot of fear of unknown things, or if you do something where you're like, I don't really know what this means or what this is about. And there's a million excuses that can happen in that space not to move forward with it because you don't know what's going to come of it. And I always say to, and then people go, I want the answers, or how do I know how or why? And I always say, the only thing that you really need in your life is a really solid, clear, trusting relationship with your own intuition. And that's it. Because, like, everything else, and as things unfold in front of you, your intuition is going to be what gives you the answer.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so, yeah, bringing it back to those, like, early, those earliest stages for me in my own healing, just being, and I was stripped down. My life I was not in a healthy place. I was dealing with a lot of emotional pain, a lot of, like, very, very repressed, decades of repressed emotion and all sorts of things, and very disconnected from just myself in a lot of ways, creatively, otherwise. And so, it was solely that in that moment that was like, there was no logical reason behind that decision to move forward into exploring that work, because my mind didn't even know anything about it.
It was all felt intuition.
It was totally felt, and I knew something in me knew that it was good for me, even though it was uncomfortable during the actual breathing. I was aware that things were being released that had been held in for a long time.
Totally.
And I knew I needed that, and so it was like, in its simplest form, I know I need to do that, and I need to do it in a space and in a way, and with a support system of people that I feel really safe with.
Yeah.
And that was how I felt with those people.
Yeah.
And
I'm thinking of, like, the first, when I took your workshop at Yoga Fest last year, and the intuitive power that came through following that practice was, like, startling.
Yeah.
Almost, like, so direct that it, like, freaked me out a bit. But it was what I really needed at the time.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that led you into a path of being really passionate about facilitating that process in other people.
It did, and not right away, though.
Yeah, it takes time.
I resisted it for a while. Yeah, I did the training, and so.
Why did you resist?
Well, so like I mentioned, that other teacher had said, "Oh, check out," So David Elliott is my teacher, and who was he was offering the training through, he would do it through that studio at that time, and they've since closed. This is a long time ago, but so I went and had a session with him privately because I wanted to meet him before I invested and moved forward with the training. I was just like, okay, well, so who's this guy? Like, let me see. Yeah. And I'm have always been intuitive that way about, like, people I work with or study with, and he is just this very, 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 very gifted, loving, wonderful healer, and just a very down-to-earth guy. And I really resonated with that because I'm a down-to-earth person and just sort of, like, needed that realness, and so I felt a connection with him and was like,
no
okay.
Fluff.
Yeah, no, I don't do that.
Beth does not deal in fluff.
I don't do fluff. Folks. I don't do, everybody's got their way, but for me and how I am in myself and the kind of, support I need from teachers in that way is, like, just too much of the airy-fairy stuff is, like, it just doesn't resonate for me.
One thing I really appreciate about the way that you go about this work, especially in the age of, yoga and spiritualism being something that's so commodified and marketed to the affluent and sensationalized.
Yes.
Like those things are all, they can be gateways for people into a practice, but they can just as easily lead them into a bigger mess or more hurt from a teacher who's not in it for the right reasons.
Right. Yeah, and there can be a lot of allure about those things because it looks nice and sounds nice.
Yeah, and the marketing's good, and Instagram videos
so people,
are great.
Oh, I want my life to, but yeah, it's, as you know as well, it's, it's the deeper work that actually gets you to a place of feeling that kind of lightness and freedom in your life. It's not just show up, wear these clothes.
Right.
Good vibes only. Like, I just don't do it. That to me is
make these sounds, say these things.
It's just like, you got to, and we're here. I mean, I'm very clear in my, stance in how I approach life for myself and how I feel called to guide and lead others is, to a place of like real, true, deep understanding that we are a soul and we are a human. That we are these two parts. And so that, like, even when we're on this spiritual path, this spiritual journey, healing, personal growth, moving towards enlightenment, all these things, and you're looking to connect, always more deeply with your soul and your purpose and all of these things in, like, your higher self, that you are also here in this body, having a human experience. Yeah. And that, like, we wouldn't have come here as a soul and chosen this experience if we weren't supposed to experience the human parts of it, and I think sometimes when things get a little too up in the clouds, it feels a little bit like we're escaping the human part of our existence, and to me that's like a real dishonoring of this life and what we came here to feel and taste and smell and see and touch. Like, we needed a body to do all those things, and we're human, imperfect people that have shit with our families and all this stuff, and so it's like, let's honor ourselves in that, and like we can be both, and we can walk through life in a way where we are really simultaneously like in both of those parts of ourselves.
And embracing connected. The experience, like the human experience you describe, as the gateway. It's like that, we've connected about our shared love for Ram Dass and all his teachings, and like, that's such a big cornerstone of it, is like all the stuff that you're talking about that can be denied by some of the modern spiritual culture is in fact the material to get you more free. Yeah.
It's exactly what you're experiencing in your human life that are, it's through those experiences that you're going to learn the lessons that you need to learn to like evolve your soul to the next level or whatever, human school.
Grist
right?
for
that's
the
what,
mill.
That's what Ram Dass says. We're all in human school. I like that.
We all get our own curriculum.
Yeah. I feel pretty good about my human school. I didn't always do great in like actual school when I was growing up. But
human school's
I
working
feel
out.
like I'm making up for it now.
So let's direct back towards like COVID. So you had kind of you'd started setting up your work and your online programs and sessions to be more online. So that's cool. But how did you, when like COVID started going down and the world was freaking out and everybody, how did that land on you personally? Intuitively, since we're in this zone of like, what was some of the first things that you intuited?
I would say I wasn't afraid, for myself personally, or it didn't feel like something I needed to fear. And like I said, there really wasn't an impact for me schedule-wise or shifting my work online or anything. And so really the overwhelming, just like a very clear feeling was, okay, I'm ready Like I'm ready to serve now. Not now, I had been serving, but just like, okay, this is what you've been preparing me for, or just here's another thing you've been being prepared for. I had a client early on, early in the weeks of quarantine when we all it really was that very upheaval, like the whole world was going into quarantine, and I had a private session with a client, and, so sweetly, just in the beginning of our conversation, she just said, I know we're supposed to be here talking about me, but I just want to ask, like, how are you? And it was so cute, and I could see her, and she was really expressing this very kind, like, genuine concern in a way for me, in terms of just her knowing, like, what I do to support her and our community, like many other people, and leading the groups and all of this stuff. And she said, like, I just, like, how are you handling all of this? You're, like, supporting all of us and doing all this stuff. And I just said, I've been being prepared for this for a long time. It wasn't, I think right away I knew I could feel, very empathic. So I pick up on a lot of energy all the time. And, I could feel the collective energy of just, like, fear. A lot of fear was getting stirred up right away, and panic and all of that. And so I have a monthly virtual group that has been ongoing for a couple of years now. And so I knew in that moment I need to, like, give a little more there. And so I right away in quarantine started offering that weekly, just like come by donation, whatever, because I just knew people were needing support. So sort of initially it was like, I just knew I got to show up and, like, serve the community more.
So you jumped right into service mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just knew, like, this is, I have been through a lot of things and had been very deeply on a healing journey for a while. Some of, what we just chatted about with starting breath work and all of that. And this has been years. And, there was, like, no question to me that it was, I'm ready to hold space for this. Like, the level of discomfort that's showing up for other people, like, I can hold space for people to be in that.
Because you know what it feels like, and you know what it feels like to go in there and work with it. Mm-hmm. I was thinking of the opening of Fierce Grace that we watched at the retreat last night, and it just speaks to the power of when you've been immersed in a practice for years and you've really gone into your own stuff, and you get to this point where whatever's happening around you, all of the, what did he say, like, the flame is wavering all around, and whatever things are coming in through the senses, like, the yogi remains connected to, remains, like, centered in the awareness that is unaffected by all of that undulation and madness.
Yeah.
So, I'm just seeing, like, the way that you responded to that as another great example of how, when you really make an extended commitment to a practice, a spiritual practice, self-work, you arrive in a much more, like, grounded and unwavering state. To where when things like COVID happen that send many people, very understandably so, into feeling like their world is totally falling apart, the ability has been cultivated to be steady. And it's not a posturing. It's like, I know how to navigate something that's scary.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just again, it was just a very calm, like, no space between, just like, this is happening, here's this happening in the world. I know what my job is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, nothing shifted.
Connection to intuition.
And what you said about just staying, being very grounded, and that's it. It's like, when you are very grounded and firmly rooted in your own center and your connection to your intuition and all of that, you don't waver. Doesn't mean you love everything that comes along in life. Like, we're going to still have our challenges and our discomforts, but, like, you don't actually waver. It's just like, okay, here's this, not an ideal situation, and it's not gonna, there was no space of, like, it's gonna knock me over, or I don't know what to do with this, or anything like that. And again, I'll re-acknowledge that I was also very grateful in it, and felt very, like, humbly grateful in it, that I had already been in a place work-wise
Yeah.
that I was working remotely. Like, I was aware of like the blessing that was for me, because I know that that was really difficult for a lot of people, challenged a lot of people, and especially so many in our yoga community, to try to shift things online really quick, you know, and you don't have technical skills to do that. Like, I really understand like the upheaval that it created for a lot of people, and people that have families trying to deal with kids at home and all that. So, you know, I really was very aware that I was very blessed that my path had just happened to be that way, where I was in a position where my personal life and my work life was not really not actually being affected. Yeah. And so and that really only added to my knowing that like I need to serve, because there's a lot of people who aren't in that position who are greatly being affected by this. And so that's the role that I only have to, you know, that I have to only just continue fulfilling, is, you know, being something that can be steady for them while they're going through all of this change and chaos. And, you know, I think, again, the unknown thing, that question mark of what does this mean for my life, or where is this going? That's a really uncomfortable place for a lot of people, you know, the unknown. And that's just another thing that in, you know, just happenstance of the history of my life, I, since very young, lived in a lot of unknown and a lot of change in my life, constant change. And so I have had training my entire life at how to adapt to unexpected change. And so it just doesn't throw me, you know. Again, because it's like, since I was very young, I've been trained for that. And I think that's something.
Your human school equipped
It's my human school. Yeah, it equipped me. And that's another thing for everyone. I'm always encouraging people to, you know, to just have that awareness that, that everything we go through in our life, there's not one thing that we experience or go through that doesn't have a purpose in you know, contributing something to either where we're going or preparing us to be able to handle something in the future. You know, so anytime you've been through, some people go, why did I have to go through this terrible thing? Sometimes it's as simple as like, because it was just preparing you to be stronger to deal with, you know, X, Y, Z that was going to happen in the future.
I've had that thought about COVID in general. Like, I mean, you know, not to get too foreboding for a moment here, but with how crazy the world is getting, I'm like, all right, this kind of feels like a preliminary test of what sort of like chaos that we may face, you know, in the years to come. So yeah, I feel like just, you know, there's a tremendous power to being able to embrace the difficulty of the present circumstances in the way that you described, of like, instead of flipping out, being like, okay, this is like preparing me for one step further.
Right. Yeah. Or just recognizing, you know, I think for me in the COVID experience, it was just like, I have been prepared for this, you know, so it was just sort of the understanding of like, here's this big, hard, crazy thing that none of us have ever been through before. But I felt like equipped with, you know, the skills, I guess, for lack of a better word, but again, just the groundedness and the rootedness that I felt like you know, I'm comfortable with other people's discomfort. You know, I don't want people to be uncomfortable, but when people are in that space, right, when my clients and students and community when they're moving through things, when they're in that space, I can hold space for that.
Yeah.
You know, and I can like
talk
help
more
them.
about that for a second.
Sure.
The comfort with discomfort, because I mean, for people who have been engrossed in their own spiritual work for a while, like that's not a strange concept, but like for people who are just starting to dig in, that it's like a crazy pair. It's like, what do you mean? Isn't this supposed to make me feel better? Right. You know? But we have to embrace the discomfort. So, you know, being someone who's embraced a lot of discomfort, what any more thoughts you have on that?
Yeah, well, and you're right, you know, in that and just how people feel and like, wait a minute, isn't this supposed to make me feel better? Or oftentimes because you're not feeling better right away, or maybe you start to feel a little bit better and then you get uncomfortable again. You know, I've had people say like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Like I must be doing something wrong in my practice
isn't working.
Because it's not working. And like, I keep running into this same issue, or I keep, you know, coming up against this same this same discomfort. And yeah, I think working with understanding that the nature of healing and the nature of personal growth and, you know, rebalancing things that have gotten out of balance, it just comes with discomfort, you know. I think maybe an easy way to kind of relate it is that, you know, our traumas and pains and things that get us stuck and disconnected in the first place, it's like, well, the things that got us there in the first place were pretty uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
So like getting out of those things is like, we're going to probably have to feel some of that discomfort again for them to be released, you know. And I work a lot with feelings and emotions and energy on that level. And, you know, feelings have to be felt. That's what they're there for. And emotions require movement. You know, that's what they are, is a moving energy. And when we don't allow them that movement, they get stuck. And so then we hold on. And so then we make a decision to work through them. Now we're allowing them the movement we never allowed them before. Well, so now we're going to feel it. And the feeling is going to be uncomfortable. And so it's
probably
not
exponentially compounded from
build up.
I often think of this thing from an Osho book that I read. He talks about animals a lot, and it was a little bit about repression and how, you know, it's a very human mind thing to repress emotion. And he was like, you know, you see two ducks on a pond, and one duck gets a little too close to the other duck, and then briefly they're like, you know, and then they like separate, and then they just like shake it out, and then they just go back to being a duck.
And then they're, center.
And he's like, humans aren't like that. It's like we have a little thing, and then we pack, or a big thing, and then we like pack all this stuff away from it, and that release never happens.
Right. And there's various reasons for that, you know. I mean, when we go through a major trauma, you know, there's actually a very good reason for where we might compartmentalize something and like put it away in a box, because we like need to be able to do that to survive. There's some like, you know, human instinct in some of that is necessary at the time for our survival.
Yeah.
It's where it creates problems is when it stays in that box for too long and we don't ever actually
enter breathwork practice.
Yeah, enter breathwork. Yeah. And I like your duck example, because I actually teach about that in some of my work about that, how I use dogs as an example where it's like, you know, they get overwhelmed with energy. There's no space between the moment that they feel overstimulated and will go run and like shake out and like roll around on the floor real crazy and like, and then like they'll be wild for like a minute or two.
Yeah.
And then they just like get up and they're just like, and they just sit there, you know, and then they're like fine again, and they just walk around, you know, walk over.
If only we could allow
lay down.
each other to do that more.
And so, you know, I actually work with a lot of that, like different ways. You know, the breath work obviously is a huge piece of the puzzle and cornerstone of my work, but also, you know, many other tools that are about this sort of thing, ways to work with
the energy,
moving energy in a way that's not about thinking about it or understanding it, just understanding that like energy is in my body, a certain emotion, right? So like say I'm like, I feel angry about something. Like as I see it, like all that means is that the energy of anger is moving through my body. Like the energy of anger needs to move through my body right now. And so, you know, for it to move and for it to not get stuck, then I have to allow it to express itself. And then at that point, it's my job to choose a healthy way to express that. Not go project it at someone else or hurt someone else, but, you know, go scream into a pillow or like whatever you need, you know, like a safe, responsible, healthy way.
In your own unique way.
But
it's
allow
like
it.
What Wenzel was saying. It's like, and when we like, you allow it your unique expression, but when we pack it away, then also over a lifetime of doing that, then it really like it takes us very far from who we are. You know? And
it turns us into, you know, ways of acting out or ways of expressing that aren't actually who we are. You know, there's this phrase we all know, hurt people, and that's where that comes from, is when you're in pain and you're hurting and you haven't allowed yourself or learned or been modeled to healthy ways of dealing with strong emotion, then you do carry that with you, and you turn into this living in that state of being in pain or being hurt, and then that's when things are going to happen that the heart of you wouldn't want to happen, but
Right.
that's where you end up projecting that out and hurting other people, either physically or with words or otherwise. And so I think movement of energy and just expression is a big thing that I work with on all levels, creatively, emotionally, energetically. All of that kind of weaves together in the work, and using the breath work to support all of that. And so there's a lot of elements, but
well, it was really cool in
expression.
the retreat how, for those who don't know, it's like I just participated in Beth's Explore retreat out here in Taos, and had the honor of leading the yoga and doing all the programming. It was really awesome. But we did the sessions each night, the breathwork extended ones, and that is doing all of the allowing all the energy to move. And then we spend a lot of other time in the programming, like exploring ways in which all of that awakened energy can be expressed in a healthy way through our own uniqueness. And that is for me experiencing that personally, that has been one of the most anxiety relieving, freeing things I've ever gone through. It's just so I would just love what you do.
Yeah, thank you. I do too. Yeah, like I said, I resisted it. I went through, just echoing back to our earlier part of our conversation, I went through the training, and it was everything I needed, put me through the ringer, and just opened me and helped me to heal things and reconnect to myself in a way that was very powerful, very profound. Could have never known that was going to lead me there, and it did, because I just kept showing up.
Yeah, you kept
just
doing
like
it.
Signing up, and I don't even know why I'm putting myself through this, because some of it was hellish. But I was
there's a really important point
know.
here, though, that I think is that needs to be highlighted, because so many people are experiencing the pain of what you described, of having all this stuck emotion, and it can be a really big barrier to get into any spiritual work because of ties to religion,
right?
Or there's so much baggage.
Yeah.
But I just want to offer the affirmation that in order to start letting that energy move and exploring your inner world and to go on your own spiritual journey, it doesn't need to be a religious thing. It's you can go on the journey that you have gone on, same for me, without any religious affiliation. It's we might connect with certain paths here or there, but I think that's an important point to highlight for people who are maybe at this point where they want to start exploring, but they're I don't want anything to do with religion.
Right.
Something like breath work is a completely non-sectarian practice.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and it's it's very spiritual in nature, what we're doing. As I see it, though, we are spiritual beings in our soul, and I think.
What does that word mean to you? It's
spiritual.
Yeah. How would you? What's the Beth definition?
Well, I'll say this, because this is sort of a bit of what I was about to say is, first of all, and just to comment on what you're talking about with religion and the resistance that can be there around that, going either direction. People feel they can't step away from their religion they were raised with, or the feeling of, I don't want to do anything religious. It shows up a lot of ways, and I feel very convicted in what feels like a knowing to me and a truth to me, that our spirituality is a very personal and intimate thing to each individual person. And for me, there is no one path or one religion or whatever, something that's here's this thing. There isn't one that would fulfill all of the things that I know that I need to round out how I feel spiritually connected and inspired and all of that, you know. So I have the breath work, and there's different practices that are, you know, in and around that, with yoga and, you know, a lot of other, you know, Native American medicine and this sort of thing that comes into play. Working with nature is a huge part of it. Working with creativity is a huge part of it. And to me, like all of that is spiritual, because it's like, it's working with yourself in a way that's recognizing that you are an expression of source, of creator, God,
your
universe.
Human is an expression
whatever.
of your soul, and your soul is an expression of the
like
one.
we're of that, and it's like
Yeah.
we're, you know, like we were talking about at the retreat. I always say this to people, like our body is an instrument, you know. We're just sort of like here to be like played that way, and here to experience life on the planet, and so I think for me, spirituality is again, you know, for me personally, and I encourage it this way for a lot of people, that it is, you know, it is an exploration. It's not one thing, and it's, even if you get to a place where you feel really, you know, good and connected in it, you're going to still evolve. It doesn't mean you're going to stay there forever, you know. So this idea of exploring is, to me, goes very much hand in hand with being, you know, whatever, being spiritual, living
Yeah.
a spiritual life is like, that's part of it for me, is like always exploring, always remaining curious.
And it's
Always
exciting
being
too,
willing to
rather
try
than like
something new.
we think of. It's easy to think of a spiritual path as like, okay, now I have to, I'll backpedal here, because this is a religious thing,
Right, yes.
where we feel like now a pressure. I have to measure up to these qualities
Right.
or whatever. But the exploratory approach is much more like freeing and exciting
and fun.
yeah,
It's much more fun.
yeah, absolutely.
It's much more fun.
Yeah, than trying to follow a staunch rule book.
Yeah, it's coming to, or just any rule book or timeline, or you got to do this or go here this many times a week, or this, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, I just don't, you know, yes, I honor traditions, and have, you know, obviously studied yoga as well, and have a lot of reverence and respect for, you know, philosophy and traditions and lineages and, you know, sciences even behind
Yeah.
these kind of things that have been developed to say, you know,
It's the
follow
difference
this.
between method and dogma.
Right, but it's
Yeah.
like you're utilizing this in a way that's like, you know, you're going to kind of make it personal to you, versus someone else saying, you need me, you need this to
Right.
get to God,
Right.
right? And I think that's a lot of, I know in my own religious upbringing, and many other people that I know that I work with, that's sort of the version of religion that they have come into, is, you know, a belief of, you know, I have to go to church to get to God. I need the
Right.
priest to get to God. Versus how I see it, and even in my own leadership, is like, I don't want anyone to need me. I don't want anyone to believe that they need to be connected to me to connect to that. Like, my job is to empower people, like help, not that I can empower them, but like hold space and get, you know, give them tools so that they can feel empowered in themselves and in their connection
Right.
to all that is on
So
their
they can
own.
Connect to their intuition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bringing to mind there's a beautiful book. It's like a daily, you know, one of these daily entry reading books. It's dated. Mark Nepo's author. And it's just beautiful little, you know, kind of journal entries, really like inspirational. And they have little meditations at the end. And there's one in there, I always change the words probably every time I talk about this, but there's one that sticks out to me that I remember. And he's talking about this, how we move through life and we experience a lot of different things, and some things are going to be for us and some things aren't, right? And this is what resonance is about. Like, some things we're going to feel really drawn to, we're going to get a lot out of, and some things we aren't. Not everything is meant for every person, you know. I always say we all like different flavors of ice. Like, we don't all like the same flavor of ice cream, you know. So like, we need all these different practices, we need all these different teachings, because we're all in different places, we're all different people, and so there's something out there for everyone at any given time. And that's where the exploring comes in, is like just being willing to just try
some
things
new ice
openly.
cream.
Yeah, and the metaphor he uses in this entry is about, you know, like the ocean fish, the fish in the ocean that like skim along the bottom and they like suck up things, and like that's how they eat. And like, they actually are sucking up like everything as they go along, but they spit out the things they don't want. It's like, it's like, just take what nourishes you. He says in the writing, take what nourishes you and just spit out the rest.
Yeah.
And not in a good riddance kind of, but just like, so even within one practice, or even within, say, the tradition of yoga, not every single piece of that is going to be for you at any given time. And so instead of, just shutting down or shutting out the whole tradition, the whole idea of it, just take the parts that work for you. You don't have to take the rest of it, and just allow it. I think a big thing, and maybe where I'm getting at with all of this, is that, there's a lot of conditioning, again, whether it's religiously or otherwise, where people are waiting for someone else to give them the answer, or waiting to be told what to do. And a lot of, as I see it, having this intimate, spiritual relationship with yourself and your intuition is about like you giving yourself the permission for your path to look how it needs to look for you. Nobody else gets to decide, Nobody else knows the answer. Nobody else knows what's going to like really serve you and help you heal. Nobody knows that better than you, and it's like you listening to your own body.
Yeah.
That's going to give you the answer more than anybody else is going to give you the
more
answer.
insights from intuitive connection. Yeah. So I want to kind of wrap things with one more question. So, even though COVID didn't bring on a big, messy change for your work, obviously some changes occurred.
Sure.
And as we're dealing with change, we realize what can be dropped and what we might want to expand into. So, with the way that you're immersed in your work and the way that you serve your community, were you able to, did you have some insights about maybe what it was time to move on from and what you wanted to welcome in or expand into, since that's kind of been, a very common theme of the times?
Yeah. Do you mean personally for me,
personally
or
for you,
in sharing with others?
Yeah, personally for you and the way you're approaching, everything you're doing.
I guess it's like a yes and no to that, because again, I think there was a lot of what was, where my trajectory with things was already at, has just sort of continued, It just was sort of, again,
more in the online direction.
That part, and even in just, growing certain areas of my work in the online program that I have, again, that was like already in the works prior to COVID, and just growing that and from like a more like business standpoint in terms of, my work supporting me and supporting my life and really contributing to my life in the way that I'm trying to create a life that feels good for me, was about creating more freedom for myself and just having more flexibility in my time. And so, I think we're moving in that direction still. And, and I think for a while now, I've been very aware that, just being immersed in anybody that's, ever launched anything creatively or otherwise, or taken any sort of entrepreneurial venture, stepped into that, will understand what's required of you, especially in like the initial few years of it. It just requires like
a lot,
all of you, and I wouldn't change any of that, because it's just how it goes. You're building something, and I was growing a community and really shifting out of my life in Los Angeles, and so it really required all of me in that way, and then you sort of reach this point where you're like, okay, we're getting the ball rolling here, and and working at this level is like not sustainable. And I've lived in burnout before in my old career, so that's like not a place that I'm willing to go. So then it just makes you start to reflect on, okay, how can I make this work in a way that's actually going to still serve people at the level that I want, and to where it's going to serve me, and I'm not going to get burnout along the way,
Yeah, because you saw the possibility to work that hard again.
Yeah. And where then it's only that, and then what happens is, again, for anybody who's lived through that sort of scenario, you understand that you get to that burnout place, and and then you feel resentful of your work. And it takes all the joy out of it, and all of the like love and care that I want to remain in there. And so the past year or two has been like moving into more balance around that, so that I can nourish my own creative processes that are wanting to happen, and just, you know, I always say, you know, just try to be the best example that I can be to my community. And, you know, I'm still in my own work too. I don't ever claim to be to be done by any means. You know, I mean, absolutely. As long as we're in a body, we've got work to do. So,
well, in our last little glimmers of sunlight here before it goes down, if people would like to get in touch with you and, you know, participate in some of your programs, where can they find you?
Everything for my work is at heldintheheart.com. So you can find me there, and all sorts of resources online. We've got a wonderful community blog. Lots of people contribute to that and write and share their creative expression, and other different tools and online courses and things like that are just there, or just to contact me if you want to ask a question or get in touch about doing the virtual group is always there. You can sign up. It's every fourth Wednesday of the month. That always happens. So you know, that's there, and just other tools that are easy to download, that self-study kind of things you can do on your own if you just want to explore solo, or you can always send me a message anytime. I'm very open to chat or answer questions, and anywhere else online as well. On Instagram is at Held in the Heart. Everything's at Held in the Heart. Anything you can find of me. So
cool.
Yeah, and I welcome it. I always love to meet new people and you know, gather more people into the community. So
well, I just want to thank you for being the serving, loving human that you are.
Thank you.
That's totally willing to go into the territory that, you know, a lot of others might numb out at, and helping us like go into that, find ways to release and express it, and emerge feeling more like ourselves. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for asking me to chat.
Totally.
And for serving at the retreat. It was so fun.
It was super fun.